On this episode of Pipeline Things, we bring on a special guest to talk about the differences and similarities between U.S. and Canadian regulatory. There are no fights, no blood is drawn, but it is a great mulligan episode with our guest, Nicki Robertson. We think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for joining us. All right, welcome to this edition of Pipeline Things. I'm your host, Rhett and my co-host, Christopher DeLeon, as we continue in this arc. I'm excited for a lot of reasons on today's episode, Chris, but before we get started, I need to know how you feel about a certain rule in disc golf, right? Okay, so on the first hole, are you allowed a mulligan or not? Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts, right? Because in some people, look, I won't say on our team, think that if you don't use the mulligan, so for our audience that's not familiar, right, with golf terms, right, if you get up to a hole and you shoot a bad shot, it's that you get a free redo and it doesn't count as a stroke.
Everybody laughs at you still, but you get to try again.
Oh, yeah, open season for mockery, right? But there's this belief that since it's the first hole for some reason, if you get up and throw your disc the wrong way, you just get a free redo. And then some people are like, hey, look, if I don't use it on the first hole, I can use it like on hole 6. Some people just think that every drive on every hole is a free mulligan. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on the mulligan?
I think it depends on how you're feeling and how competitive you are. I think we kind of have a vibe where it's like first hole, you get a mulligan, but it's use it or lose it. Like if we're pretty close down the stretch or we're at the turn of hole 9 and I want to redo, it's like, no.
I agree.
No.
That's
but the first hole, it's you're kind of stiff. You were in Houston, so you're likely in traffic. Your hands have been at 10 and 2. So first hole's mulligan. After that, no.
Now, do you get to choose which disc or do you have to take the second one if you do?
No, you can choose your disc.
So you can throw 2
Oh, yeah.
And you can choose which one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So it's kind of like, let's be real.
Because you want competition too. You know what I mean? Like you didn't just want to, while it's fun to destroy them through the 18 hole course or 9 if you're doing a short, but.
Did you ever really fall apart on the first hole? I mean, you can get off, it's not like college football. You can lose a hole and come back and make the next 10 work.
I don't know, but because if you hit it right, it kind of sets the tone. You're kind of excited. You feel like you're on. Whereas if you like shank the second one too, you're kind of like, oh boy.
Oh God, shank the second one. So yeah, audience, for those of you who are wondering, like, let's be real clear. Chris and I, people ask us, we shoot the podcast one and done. Like we get in here,
we do it live, baby.
We do it live, and you take what you get, except for this episode.
Yeah.
So this episode is 100% a mulligan.
Yeah.
And I think, but you know what? The first disc we threw might have been a foul, but I'm pretty sure that the second disc is going to be a home run.
I don't know. I would say this is very much like doing it live, but there are no edits. Like we're doing this, it's coming out. Like we don't know if we should let the person review it. We should just drop it.
100%, dude. Shoot and let's go. So that's it. So to our audience, our guest today is our partner in Canada, Miss Nicki Robertson. I'm going to bring her on. And in full disclosure, this is the second take on this episode because the first take, Nicki was too nervous. We didn't get real Nicki. So we were like, dude, we got to do a mulligan. And on take 2, we got to see real Nicki. So I'd like Nicki, welcome to the show. Will you introduce?
Welcome back.
Will the real Nicki Robertson please stand up?
Yeah, thanks for having me back and let me do a retake. And just to remind you, it's actually Dr. Robertson. Instead of Miss, but I worked real hard for that degree. Miss is nice, but Doctor works too, Anyways, I'm just joking. It was a great experience in grad school.
Nicki, I got to be honest. I thought whenever you did that whole bust, which is really good, I thought you were going to apologize right after. Like, no, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. But you didn't, so it's good. We're making progress here on the apology spectrum.
We're making progress on my cultural problems.
I also feel like this episode, you're getting a whole lot more of like the partnership vibe here, right? Like you're much more comfortable in your seat. You're willing to check somebody or two. So I feel like this was better timing anyway.
So there we go. So Dr. Robertson, will you please introduce yourself?
I'm just joking.
No, it is. I want you to know you set a tone. It's Dr. Robertson for the rest of the episode.
That's my grandpa. Dr. Robertson is my grandpa. It's not me.
All right. I relent since you brought in grandpa. Nicki, please introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. So my name's Nikki. I live in Calgary, Alberta, and Canada. That's not the 51st state, but your neighbors and friends up north. Yeah, I joined D2 back in June, partnered up to open the Canadian office, and I've been having a blast. Before that, I was at a couple different operators for a baker's dozens worth of years. And before that, I did my doctorate at the University of Alberta.
And before that, you were in the States for school, right?
I was, yeah. So when you're talking about golf, I went on a golf scholarship down to Minnesota. So sometimes
Soda.
you hear the down at the bubbler.
So to all our clients out there, we are accepting challenges now in a golf scramble format, which will basically be Chris and I hitting clubs like
No, more like caddying for her.
Yes, Chris and I caddying for
I'll be the
Nikki
club
while
caddy
we
since I don't know if
challenge.
you know golf clubs. Do you?
Yeah.
Do you know golf club? Okay, then I'll be ball caddy.
Oh, you mean I would tell? Oh, I just pull all of them out and tell you to pick which one you want.
I'll be club caddy. He'll be ball caddy. He'll carry the
well, it
sand
makes
around
sense.
too.
You guys have really helped support, set up the Canadian operations up here. You've been more than just a caddy, but coach and everything, and definitely appreciate it. So
I'm going to set the tone for this episode for our audience. So the reason we brought, and you might wonder why we bring Nikki on, it's because we're going to talk today about the differences between U.S. and Canadian regulatory environments. And we think that no person perhaps has, maybe more to say on that subject and is a better guest than Nikki. So Nikki, I want to just give you a little bit of background on why this topic, for me, I'm looking forward to it. For our audience that are listeners, if you listen to the first Failure Files series that we did, it had a marked impact on me. And because I think for most of my career, I was always under this, hey, performance-based regulation is good. It's what we should move to. But I felt as I was going through the first Failure File series, I had this real internal struggle of being like, oh, I see why we have prescriptive regulations now. I see why we have prescriptive regulations now. And by the end of that series, I really felt like I think I'm on the prescriptive regulation bandwagon. And that my reasons are that I'm sorry, but I feel like if history teaches us anything, it's that we often don't do what we should do sometimes. And so enter prescriptive regulations to just require it carte blanche, right? Which is more expensive, but then ensures a minimum level of safety. Going a little bit further than that, even Andy Drake's episode, he gave the reasons why they did it. And it's because, he said, look, the U.S. regulatory environment is completely different than, for instance, in the Canadians. And we're going to talk a little about that. But Nikki, specifically, what have your experiences be? So help the audience understand a little bit what's your background in dealing with U.S. and Canadian regulators? Have you had to deal with both?
yeah, so I've dealt with both the CER, that's the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as PHMSA. I've also dealt with the BCER, that's a provincial regulatory body out in British Columbia, as well as the Alberta, the Ministry of Regulatory, which Ministry of Environment and Regulation, and in Saskatchewan. And then, so a few state regulators as well through my time at my various operators. It's interesting, though, my experience in the US up until working with the two of y'all is been from a Canadian perspective, trying to learn the American system and fitting into that, making our programs work for that, versus now the last couple of months I've had the opportunity to get to see the American clients from a different perspective, and it's been quite eye-opening to be able to work on the cross-border.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because my perception in the time that I was working as a consultant has always been that the Canadian approaches, and I don't like the term, but I'm going to use it better, right? That's how I think it's presented.
Judgment.
It is, right? But I think people feel performance better than prescriptive, performance greater than prescriptive, and I'm curious is what your perceptions
Some would interpret
are on
that as just flexibility, maybe not better.
Fair. Improve my words, fix my words, change my words. My question is having worked on both, how would you characterize them?
It's pros and cons, I think, from an outsider looking in. I definitely enjoy working more on the Canadian regulatory framework because you can, as Chris mentioned, the word flexibility, be able to actually use science and math to make the best risk-based decisions, and spend your dollars the most wisely, versus the checkbox exercises that it comes across as when going through an audit. But I think it's just the different ways that they're put forward. Um, yeah, I could go into a whole bunch of tangents
No,
on
so
this
when you
one.
say science and math, like let's be real. Like give me an example. Maybe dense is a good place, or unless you think there'd be a better threat, right? So like in the U.S. side, you're saying that, for instance, dents are above a certain depth for a long time. You had to dig it.
Yeah, it's a if this, then do this, right?
Yeah,
Kind of
that's the
walk your way
U.S.
through
side.
it.
If then do this, then this. Yes.
Versus almost every clause in CSA uh, has a way to say or engineering assessment and or engineering assessment. And so there's always a way that you can use, the code sets a minimum of things to think about, but there's always an out for an EA. And that's really fun as a pipeline integrity engineer because you get to always be learning and evolving new techniques, new methods, and trying to push the limit to what makes sense to spend our money on and what doesn't make sense.
So I'll ask maybe this question, tying it to Rhett's comment, right? So Rhett brought up the episode where we talked to Angie Drake, and the idea there was, in the U.S., PHMSA needed somewhere to start from a pipeline safety perspective, right? And so they started with HCAs, and then the idea was to grow across all different classifications of pipe. And the prescriptive component to it establishes a floor of safety, right? Like a minimum requirement. And so in the US, it was clear that they felt that was the need to be more directive about how to start this journey of pipeline safety through pipeline integrity. That seems cultural to me. What do you think, your personal perspective, why is it that you think that the Canadians don't maybe need as strong directive towards the minimum standard of safety to where you have to prescribe exactly how you should respond to things, and that you guys are given the flexibility of an EA?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. So I'm going to say one and then I'm going to go two. So one thing to there, it's cultural. I think about the way the evolution of the oil and gas pipeline system is here, both generationally and how our regulations come about, because up until quite recently, it was all the baby boomers that were running all these companies, and they were really a part of like the forefront of the explosion of the oil and gas industry
What explosion?
here.
Which one in particular? Something like
No,
Bellingham
no,
or
no.
something
I
else?
just mean like the industry taking off, right? A lot of growth. Yes, Bellingham also is where integrity got its start. And instead of waiting for an incident to happen north of the border, it
Okay.
was a lesson right away. Let's go. And I think because the industry was very heavily led by engineers, um, it was, and our approach culturally to engineering is self-governing, that we kind of went down a different path. And speaking to kind of that engineering kind of type path, was just kind of wrapped up some Canadian Standards and Association meetings this week. And it's just amazing to see all the volunteers that come together to write the code. And so, as my may rest in peace, my father always said, the code is written in blood, right? And it's engineers coming back, putting in those lessons learned, and our frequency of getting those lessons learned in are every 4 years, and they're written by engineers for engineers, versus my perspective is that your CFR regulations are written by government, enforced by government, right? And so it's a bit of a different take.
Wait.
And
Can you
not
say that again? Did you say written by engineers and enforced by engineers?
Written for
Yeah,
engineers,
Written for
by engineers.
by committee, right? Everybody sits in a room and they'll argue about the smallest little word for an hour and a half because of how it could be interpreted and the commentary that goes behind it. I mean, it's awesome. I love it.
It was interesting
fills
the
up
way
my cup.
you said that, and you said written by government for government. I don't actually know that I disagree with that, but it just really made me think. I thought it was a fairly profound/provocative statement.
Mm-hmm.
How often in y'all's interpretation are operators involving attorneys? And I want you to know why I ask. Because I don't know if she knows, right? But a lot of times in the U.S., when a decision about a regulatory thing comes up, attorneys get involved. Regulatory attorneys get involved. I didn't say regulatory engineers. They're also involved. But regulatory attorneys in the interpretation for legal reasons. And that made me wonder, do y'all have similar things on the Canadian
we
side?
have, in so much that, just to give you feedback, like we have a whole culture around it, what I coined Rhett's terminology of interpretation mechanics, right? Everything from the code to now FAQs, where FAQs weren't law, now they are law. And then the punitive measures that are taken because of interpretations. And so it's become quite a deal. So your comment around, the political component to our regulatory environment and how we implement integrity management, they are married, right?
Very much so in the US.
And
And
so
I would say they're much more separated up north. I mean, there are regulatory lawyers up here as well. I would say they get more involved in the environment side of when things go bad. Sometimes it comes in more with like development type things, but when it comes to failure and technical reasons, that is typically always left to the engineers, and then to different regulatory frameworks to do the investigation. But they try to keep it fairly technical. It's not. I mean, companies still sue each other, but it's not regulatory pushback.
I think something that would help maybe frame the conversation also for our American listeners is, how does the pipeline industry regulation come about, right? So is that driven by
on the Canadian side?
Yeah, because, and I won't
That's a
say
good
names,
question.
too many, right? But there's several regulatory bodies. Like, for example, in the US, we have, the state requirements that are as a minimum, the federal requirements, and then depending on your jurisdiction, one of them reigns over the other, and they're responsible for doing the inspections. I don't want to get to maybe that depth, but just maybe a little bit higher and say, how are the regulations established in Canada, and what are the biggest components or the biggest gears in that machine?
Yeah, I would say it's simpler north of the border than it is south of the border, but that's my bias, right?
Sure.
And that's if you have an interprovincial line, or you guys would say interstate line, that is regulated by the Canadian Energy Regulator. If we cross from a province into the US of A, that is also the federal regulator, the CER. But if your asset is contained inside a province, it is 100% the provincial regulator's jurisdiction. And so, but in all
So, like,
of
when you
our
the
regulations, though,
CER doesn't get involved. So, if you have a pipeline that's wholly within Alberta,
it should, depending on how the company has licensed it, it should be AER. If it was in Alberta, per se, it'd be AER.
Just want to make sure I understood that. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Keep
So
going.
now, how do those regs come to be? So you said, for example, earlier you said CSA and engineers come together every 4 years, 4 engineers by engineers.
They're working like right now. This is a plug for CSA, public review, everybody. January, it's coming out for public review for feedback. And any new changes that are going to go into it, that's 2031.
So CSA governs inter-pipelines or intra-pipelines?
CSA is the Canadian Standards Association, which is incorporated by reference on our federal onshore pipeline regulations, as well as each provincial regulatory body has incorporated CSA by reference, the most current edition for most of them. I could be wrong. And then they have some additional requirements that are specific to their province.
So at its
for the most part, they're very similar.
So in the bones of it, engineers get together every 4 years roughly and issue standards.
Times a year.
Yeah, but I'm saying every 4 years you'll get a new version of it.
Yep.
And it's common practice for the regulators to incorporate that most recent version.
At the time it is released, there's no
waiting period.
we drop it, and then you have 6 months to implement
Yeah, I
it
got to
at
be
the
honest.
time it's released.
That is kind of cool, and I'd say a bit impressive because that's one of the challenges. Like when we talked to Jerry, Jerry said standards should drive regulation, but I think unfortunately in the United States, again because of the prescriptive nature, regulations often happen apart from standards. I want to go back a couple of questions that you raised. I was just writing questions, Nikki, when you were talking. You mentioned that during your recent time with us, it's been eye opening for you to see some things on the U.S. operator side. What do you mean by that? Right? Like
Keep their names out of it. We don't want to get in trouble.
Keep their names out of it. Don't talk about people specifically.
Well, before as an operator at, let's say, IPC,
A client? Yeah.
plug
Okay.
for that, get your abstracts in. We maybe wouldn't have had as open of conversation discourse because someone may overhear something and fear of action from a regulatory body off of being super transparent and sharing true struggles versus the Canadian operators typically are a little bit more blunt. I don't know, maybe it's cultural. But it's also, I think, there's less fear of getting penalized. And so, and then I think it goes to that prescriptive versus performance based component too, where we're all sharing lessons a little bit more openly to get to performance versus if you share lessons learned in the US to get to performance and it doesn't check some whatever box or it could check an interpretation a different way, there's fear. So folks, I always took it that maybe folks were a little bit more guarded, and now I kind of see like there's a very different approach between what they really think and what they say. Like
Yeah,
it's very
so
impressive. I
yeah,
don't have that political skill set.
yeah, I think it's interesting. So what you're seeing is, or what you're describing to me is absolutely like in a room or a conference, operators on the U.S. side will not speak up because they know there are regulators there, and what can and say, what you say can and will be held against you in the court of law, so to speak, right? And so a lot of times operators will do things that are not outside of code, or they're addressing problems which they feel is the appropriate way to do it. But because of how it could be interpreted or could be understood or misinterpreted, I will say,
They don't share it.
yeah, they don't share it, and they're like, "You're absolutely right." I mean, that perception of U.S. operators, I think, is accurate. And now, in intimate circles, they may open up, but those are pretty rare situations. So, hey, do you have another question?
Well,
you wanna
yeah,
ask for the
I
break?
want to get one more thing to kind of catch this whole vibe, right? So in the U.S., audits are a big deal from a compliance perspective. And there's different ways that we won't get into on the call about how those happen and the pros and cons of them. And it's again in the simplest form. Talk to us about the audits, right? So what would you feel? What are some of the drivers, I guess, and often how would you describe that relationship between an operator and a regulator in an audit setting?
Yeah, so that. I'm gonna dodge a question like a politician that I said it
Like a
wasn't.
Oh,
metallurgist?
she's learning.
Yeah,
Like a
She's getting
metallurgist?
adept.
Say it
Um,
depends.
even on the code committees, right?
Yeah.
Engineers for engineers, there's audit there is different regulators, that's the word, that are sitting on those code discussions too. And so when they're openly talking about how we change code, they're also a part of it real time. So when it comes to audits, I think it depends on which regulatory body in Canada you're working with. But our provincial in general, our provincial regulators are partners with us, with the engineers for the most part. Like we all want the exact same thing. The way that you typically get selected is they have quotas for randomly checking different assets inside different people's portfolio. And if you're a good performer, you stay the minimum. And if they start to find stuff, your frequency will increase. Or if you have an event, then you're definitely like if you have an event, you're getting restrictions put and sanctions put on you, and it's a daily if not weekly conversation to get those lifted. So
Do you guys have a big reporting process where operators are reporting specific information to a regulatory body, which may or may not be influencing the regulator's actions?
yeah, the federally there's the information exchange that happens annually where they get a set of information. It's a standard set of information year over year. And that's just to track company profiles and also performance. And then we have a big sit down and you go through it with them page by page, question by question. Sometimes it can take a week, sometimes it can take a couple weeks. And then on the provincial side, there's different recording thresholds depending on province by age too. So if you have an aged asset, they're more interested than if you have built a newer asset for reporting requirements on integrity management programs. And then obviously if you have an event, there's a similar to PHMSA, there's a reporting mechanism so they can track.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what. So the mulligan's going much better. We're taking throw number 2 for sure.
I feel like we're on dude. I feel like we're on the 4th basket already.
I
At
know,
least on a 9-hole
real.
short course, we're at
Great.
least halfway through now.
When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about these EAs and quality. I got some questions I want to ask you. Audience, hang on. We'll be right back with our guest, Dr. Robertson, when we return. All right, audience, welcome back as we continue our conversation with the expert ball golfer, Dr. Nicki Robertson, and talking about our conversation. You told you I was going to go with it multiple times. It should not surprise
Ball
you at this
golfer,
point,
dude.
Nicki. Ball golfer. Yes, she is. What's the best round you ever shot, Nicki?
I shot 35 on the back 9 for my junior club championships when I was 17. That was the best 9 holes of my life. I was 4 under, and I won it with a 78.
As a
Pretty good shooter.
junior in college?
I was 17.
17,
so
junior in
it's
high
the
school.
championship.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in high school.
Cool. If you went out and played now, how well would you play?
Not good. Yeah, I play twice a year in scrambles in industry events up here. I love it.
What part of your
sometimes
game
I play-
suffers the most? Is it the short game? Is it the putting?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it just
I've
driving?
always been bad at putting. I used to have average of like 40 putts a round. People are like, "What is wrong with you?"
Is it
I'm
because
like,
you
"I don't
overthink
know."
it?
100%. Just like the reason why I needed a mulligan on this podcast.
All right. So, Nicki,
My husband and I used to play pickleball in a league. And anybody who knows pickleball, it's called dinking when you go back and forth across without, essentially a volley like in tennis. And our team name was over dinking it. So yeah, it's a household problem.
that is
Yeah,
clever. Way
throwing
to go.
shade now on him. That's not nice of me.
I didn't know you in that throwing shade. You assumed that we thought he was the one over dinking and not necessarily you.
That's
So
true. It's the
let's be
household.
clear, yeah.
It's a household problem.
Oh yeah, poor Emmett's getting drug into it now. and
Back
he's
to
not-
EAs.
So, Nicki,
EA Sports.
Dude, that was good. In that first half, you mentioned that y'all are self-governing, self-regulating on the engineering side, right? And that's how you have so much confidence in the process. What my question was, when you're doing these EAs, how do you ensure that you get sound engineering right from whoever's doing it, right? Because in my mind, I'm thinking if somebody wants to be
Because we've seen what you're
less
about to say.
scrupulous.
We've seen this.
If somebody wants to be less scrupulous, it's almost like, look, in the United States, when you get in a legal battle, you can find an expert witness who has a PE license who will tell you whatever you want. And I imagine if I wanted to do an EA north of the border, I could probably find an engineer who's willing to sell their stamp. And I don't mean sell
Yep.
it literally. I mean sell the answer figuratively and then put their stamp on it. So how do you protect against that? How do you ensure sound engineering?
Well, I think how we have done it and how it is going now are two different things. I think there's a bit of an erosion on it, but I would say how we've traditionally done it and how when it works, you have a process through your body that governs the engineering practice. Those are all volunteers as well as paid people who support the management of the engineering practice in each province. And then from
So is this
that,
like a PEGA? Help me understand this. When you
Yes,
speak
yeah,
about that, you
it's
speak
a
about things
PEGA.
like a PEGA. Okay, gotcha.
a PEGA, a PEGS, etc. BC engineers. And so those folks oversee. And so if you see an infringement by an engineer, you are to self-report, and then that goes to a body of folks who review all the information and then apply penalties. And the penalties can be anywhere from thousands of dollars to you lose your license.
Does that happen a lot? Do y'all get a lot of self-reports?
I.e.
Oh,
snitches.
They're not snitches. I actually think that
It was so
that
inappropriate.
right there, Chris, is the reason why I think that it's not working out as much anymore, is because culturally it's deemed snitching when really it is holding others accountable, so that you don't need to have a regulatory body.
So is it common for one engineer to snitch on another? So by self-reporting, you mean from the same body, or do you mean self-reporting as in, like, the person says, I made a mistake and I need to let everybody know I made a mistake because I'm a good person?
No. It's an engineer.
It's true snitching. Where
it's not snitching.
Okay.
It's reporting.
Okay.
It's upholding the engineering standards.
I love it. Hey, I'm with you.
Yeah.
We have not said anything different.
That's one part, and then the other part is, and we have it at D2 Integrity.
Have you ever snitched on somebody?
Input it. Oh, I wish I could so bad. There's a few.
I was just curious what we got into here. Maybe that should have been.
I haven't, for the record, I haven't, but I have talked to my.
She got real close. She wrote it up. She was about to hit send.
She slept on it for 24 hours.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other part that I was saying is, like, at D2 Integrity, the way that we review reports, where you have a writer, a reviewer, and then approver, that's a similar process. But instead of it just being D2 Integrity's process or good engineering practice process, it's a mandated process, and we have different words for it. So you have I'm not going to mess this up, the authenticator. That's the person who is taking professional accountability for that work. And then you have the validator, who ensures that the company's quality processes are being followed in order to release that work. And so anything, and Pega made this beautiful, like, infographic diagram, anything that you take values, you apply math, and you make a decision off of is called an engineering work product. And so all of that work that's done by an engineer or a licensed professional or a professional technologist all needs to fall within that scope.
You just
and
use
so that
three different terms. Those don't all have to be licensed PEng people. Those three people.
So a PEGA does more than just engineering. They do engineering and geologists. And recently, the asset for Alberta Society of Engineer Technologists also have joined in, and so there's different names based on different educational background and components, and then also areas of expertise. So you can become a licensee, which is equivalent to a PEng in a space, but not in all spaces. And so there's some nuances there.
Seems like it's engineers looking after engineers versus it being regulatory bodies, which are a composite of every background and motivator governing engineers. That's the simple takeaway, as I understand it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So I get really passionate about when you say snitches, because if you want the luxury of being self-regulating, and that means that you have that much trust from society that you're upholding things. And so that's why you talk about engineering. I'm a third generation Canadian engineer, so it's like a family culture.
I can appreciate it. The reason why I say it that way is, one, to just get a rile out of you, but two,
it worked
because here south of the northern border, there's this whole idea of safety management systems is kind of like the evolution of integrity, right? So integrity is a component of a safety management system, and safety management systems rely a lot on self-reporting, not snitching. Right, where I would say the distinction is self-reporting is, I know I made a mistake, and so I will put this into the system so that others can learn from it. And so it's building that confidence in that, being careful about punitive measures such that the individual who recognized it is the first person to speak up, versus it being peer based, where if that person didn't self-report and someone else saw it, you might approach them and say, hey, we think you should self-report, because if you don't, I will. And so that was just a little bit of a facetious way to highlight the difference, where not that one is better than another, just the path that we begin to see here in the US is people really trying to push towards this safety management system, right? Where it's a little bit more about true self-reporting from each individual.
So from an integrity program perspective, we have that. We have voluntary self-disclosures,
So going back,
but
right
not on an
before
engineer-based.
Chris insulted you guys by calling y'all stitches, right? Snitches. And,
Yeah.
We didn't say anything about stitches yet.
Just kidding. Right, everybody knew where that was going. Nikki, you kind of mentioned an erosion. I'm curious what you meant by that statement, right? Because that seems, look, I'll just be honest. It seems like
So
that's a
good.
very.
I used erosion because she said Apega then brought in a geologist, and so you like made
No,
that.
that's
I love
not
how
why.
you see how he did that.
Geologists
He's so
have always
clever.
been there.
He's
He
so
is
clever.
clever.
Erosion to your
YouTube.
self-reporting. Does that mean all the geologists fell off? Is that what you mean?
You two
No,
one day
the
can be a
geologists are
podcast
great.
host. So
No, but the erosion that I'm kind of referencing is that I think in this generation of AI and computer power and technology, I think the importance of engineering in Canadian culture may be seeing a bit of a decline. And I say it in the sense that no longer are companies looking for long range plans and long range profitability. Everything is so much more quarter. How are we going to do it quicker, faster, for less? And so with that, I think comes and you can see it from the composite of major midstream companies and the percentages of engineers that they have in leadership positions is dwindling, year over year. And so that trickle down effect of the importance of engineers making the right decisions for the right reasons with the right technical justification, you're starting to get a lot of financial
Nikki, you're
push on
pushing
it.
buttons.
I
and
mean, look, that's
political-
real easy. You want to get profitable, you just replace engineers with processes. I don't understand what's
Bingo.
hard.
That is
100%.
literally what I was gonna say. Is it's here on the U.S. side, like regulation has become such a fundamental part of pipeline integrity. People don't do math anymore, right?
Yeah,
And it's even
you
like
can't do that.
my kids. Like half of my, well, I guess.
Why do you need math? Hey,
Yeah,
hey, Google.
bingo.
Can
That's
you
what it is.
calculate the
Like
hoop
I'll put it
stress?
like this: my oldest child has fully embraced technology and refuses to do decimal math or fraction math because it's a process that she doesn't want to go through when all I need to do is know how to use technology. Whereas my 7-year-old is like, it is so cool to do long division. I want to do this. Right. So I know which one is going to be an engineer and which one is not. And I feel like a lot of integrity is kind of going that way. Right. Like I remember when I first started and Jerry was on there, right. It was kind of like, I got to do a lot of the math, right. I got to figure out like, okay, what is this metal loss feature? Why do I trust the ILI data? I'm going to run the calculation in a spreadsheet. Then we figured out how to bring that in their GIS. And then I was like, well, I don't know if I trust it. So I'm going to do the math anyways. And you go down this whole path of, I'm still an engineer. I need to do the math. And a lot of the times now when we talk, I mean, outside of D2 integrity, it's a lot of just about process, right? Like, oh, well, we wrote up a spec and someone else did that, but they're the integrity engineer. And I'm like, well, if you're the integrity engineer and someone else did the math, how do you know the math was right? And so I think you hit on something really important. And I don't know if it's generational or maybe just a product of the levers around pipeline integrity, which maybe aren't letting engineers be engineers. And so I want to use this as a segue, if you don't mind, because otherwise we'll go down that sidebar a long time. It makes me think about EA, right? So Rhett brought up the question of sound engineering, and you and I have had a whole lot of talks about EA, right? You're like, oh, we'll just do an EA, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, like you use EA like a Joker, right? Or like a
Get out of jail free
Like
card.
Roy
Get
Kent
out of jail
exactly.
free.
And I'm like, where's the process behind it? He's like, oh, just do an EA. And I'm like, wait, you said you're going to do an EA on class. You're going to do an EA on dense. You're going to do an EA on a metal loss feature. I'm like, give us a vibe for those of us Americans that are used to processes and you have to have a written procedure for how you do a process. What is an EA and how do you use it?
So an engineering assessment is a debated term, but it is used in CSA. And what it really means is that you can limit the bounds of what an engineering assessment is. It means that you document all your data inputs, you figure out which methodology is fit to solve the problem that you're seeking to solve. Like what question are you trying to answer? and then going through these methodologies work. Here's my criterion of what pass looks like. And then actually doing the math and the analysis and putting it together and saying, did we meet our objective? Does it go through, does it pass or does it not pass? So for like a dent assessment, for say, there's a clause in CSA that says susceptible to fatigue. Okay. Well, what does that mean? That's pretty broad. How do you know if it's susceptible to fatigue? Well, you got to do an engineering assessment to know what's your cycle loading.
So you did an
What
EA
is your
and an
fatigue
EA.
life? Yeah, 100%.
That's not confusing at
So,
all.
and so anytime, and it
Let's
goes
try
back
to
to that
write a process.
APEGA work product, right? You can deem a lot of different work EA. And so I like personally, and the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association, which ceases to exist, CEPA, came out with the different types of levels of EA. And so level 1 is something that is routine, self-confined, feature specific. And then level 2 would be something that is threat specific or area specific. And then level 3 being the whole pipeline, every threat under the sun. You don't get to put your blinders on and just do one subset of analysis. But you could have a debate between a whole bunch of us about what the heck an EA means, because in some organizations it means something much more
Do
specific than what
regulatory
I'm.
bodies review and approve your EA process or just the results?
They review and approve neither.
That's what I was
You
about
as
to
the
say, yeah.
operator have to review and approve it, right?
Bingo.
Bro, I was just checking the waters
Yeah.
here, bro.
They self-regulate, bro. Self-governance. So
But you make a good point. So at every company, most operators have here's our engineering assessment process of how they go through the engineering, and then they follow that. So then when they say, okay, what's your process for quality or sound engineering? Here's what it looks like. And a funny thing on that, I was in a CSA meeting, and competency got brought up. Well, they
Oh,
need to be
boy.
competent in this. They need to be
Yeah.
competent in
Let's
that.
go.
And so that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we'll have
Hey,
to
as
save
long as
for
you have
another
that little
Yeah.
pinky ring, you're competent, right?
no, let's
No, that's not how it works.
let's bring
but
that
I
up
do
'cause
like
that's
the
a-
ring. There's the ring. There's 2 of them there.
Look,
for everybody.
that's a 31.8 topic too, man. It's been a big deal, but we definitely don't have enough time to get into that. I think is actually a really good place to wrap it up, Nikki. And I want to say, we well done. Second throw was much
Yeah,
better than
I
the
like
first.
this.
Like that was really
We finished
good.
the front 9. This was good.
Absolutely. And to our audience, I don't think it's the last time you'll hear from Dr. Robertson on the show.
Yeah, if y'all don't know,
potentially.
again, one of our big things on the podcast is to bring cool people to the forefront. I'm gonna be honest with you. We hired Nikki because I think she's awesome. So if you don't know Nikki, I know all of you people north of the border know Nikki. High energy, brilliant, great personality. I know we feel super blessed to have her on the team. But for those of you that don't know Nikki, like my 12-year-old would say on her YouTube videos, like and smash the subscribe button. Like find her up on LinkedIn, friend her, invite her out for coffee. Don't be shy. She's great. We think you'll love her.
For sure. And Nikki, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. To our audience, it's been great. We'll see you guys again in a couple of weeks. And thanks for joining us on the show. This episode was shot at the Workwell, produced by Sarah Etier. It wasn't written by anyone. It was shot half Canadian, half U.S. on the spot.